each initiative, maybe from on A on one side all the way across, and then you all will have an opportunity to introduce yourselves, and then we'll introduce yourselves, and then we'll go back to the beginning, and we'll give each member an opportunity to express about their what they're proposing, and then afterwards we will ask the questions. So let's see, Jim French, come on up. See, that's some downriver hospitality right there.
You're the A, right? I didn't know it was a microphone.
So we'll start over with you, Adrian. Would you mind introducing yourself? And
Not at all. Thank you, Duncan, for having me up tonight. My name is Adrian Keys. I live in North Fork. Been there, the property owner there for 17 years, pushing 18. I volunteer at North Fork Rotary and for the fairgrounds also. I'm a director on the fair board. And I'm the president of Trinity County Agriculture Alliance. Is that adequate?
so Adrian is up here because the author of the ballot measure, Supervisor John Fenley, I reached out to him to ask him to come and express himself and answer questions, and he was unavailable this evening. And when I asked if there was somebody else who he would like to represent, he couldn't think of anybody. And so we thought we'd have a farmer who would be impacted by this tax come up and give his perspective. So thank you, Adrian.
Thank you very much.
Is that mic working?
I don't know.
It's not.
I can hear. Can you hear? Yes.
Sorry, I have a hard time hearing.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay. They never work for me. I'm Kathy Ratliff with Trinity County Life Support. We are a nonprofit, your nonprofit local ambulance, and we're here to talk about D&E. I've been with Life Support for 20 years full-time, and for a few years before that, I've been in EMS for 30 here in the county.
Good evening, my name is Scott Alward, and I'm one of the board of directors of the current Trinity County Life Support. And I also, if we are successful with our measures D&E, I will be on the board for the new community service district. Let's see, I started my career in 1975 in the fire service. I was a medic for about 6 years down in Southern California, and worked my way through the ranks. And when I retired, I moved up here, and I got involved in the volunteer fire department. I was the fire chief for 6-7 years, and I'm still a volunteer there.
Jim French, I'm coming to talk about the Measure F. I'm not a paid consultant with Trinity Alps schools, but I know a lot about them. I taught at Weaverville Elementary School, I taught at Trinity High School. Both of my daughters graduated from both those schools, and I have a grandson that hopefully will. But I'm here today to talk to you about the measure on the March 3rd ballot regarding mold remediation.
Thank you, Jim. Let's go back to Adrian, and we'll just move straight to Measure A. Express yourself, and then we'll go from there.
All right, thanks again. I hope you can hear me better now. Well, Measure A is a tax on cannabis, largely on the cultivation portion of the licensing. It is a very oddly structured tax where you'd be paying your tax before planting, or then before ever being paid for any work you do. At $1.45 a square foot for an outdoor license, that comes up to $14,500 for a 10,000 square foot farm, which is a very small farm. It's just a sustenance size farm. And $7,500 of that about is due prior to planting the other in the fall. The way that that's structured in the regulated market, it seems that the author may have forgotten that we're dealing in a regulated market. Payment is not guaranteed or scheduled. You have to do tremendous lab protocols. You have to find a distributor, and then ultimately you end up waiting forever to get get paid. There's some real problems with the state regulation that make it very difficult on farmers. And this tax is really detrimental to the smaller farms. And going through the years drafting this ordinance alongside with the county and Trinity TAA, Trinity Action Alliance, I was in a group that sat with them for several years trying to sort this out. The one consensus we came to is that any ordinance that we do pass should support our smaller local farms and not just put them all out of business through this prohibitive taxation or licensing structure and to have them replaced with corporate type entities. And so this tax definitely pushes the industry in this county in a more industrial direction, which makes it very difficult for the hundreds of local small farms that are licensed in the county. I could go into great depth about why I think there's a lot of erroneous and problematic pieces of this, but maybe some will come out in question, so I think it might be best to wait for that. Otherwise, I'm asking for a no vote on this and for all of our communities to come together between all the stakeholders in this and develop a tax. I mean, it's obvious that their county needs income, and cannabis is a sector in this county, and we all need to contribute more. And many people here contribute through working at the Grange. You know, some of us were Rotarians and all sorts of other volunteer positions, and that's what's kept this county going for the entire time I've been here. And we could do better, I think. I think Trinity County deserves better, and I know that we can do better. So that's why I'm here tonight, and I'm more than willing to answer any specific question about this tax or any other of our neighboring counties' taxes, or how the state is reviewing taxes at this time. It's a pretty big and open conversation at the state right now in general. So where do I go from here?
All right, so I think we're going to pass it over and just proceed through, and then we'll answer the questions after.
Thank you.
All right, I would like to tell you why we arrived at Measures D&E. Trinity County Life Support's nonprofit was formed 26 years ago, 1993. Prior to that, ambulance service was a for-profit company, and prior to that, it was hospital-based, and those models failed. Our nonprofit has worked well for 26 years, but we have also worked very hard to make it work without enough resources. To make it go, we work our crews for a 24-hour shift, and they're paid for 16 hours. They are paid for the additional 8 if their sleep is interrupted. A full-time crew member works 3 consecutive 24-hour shifts, and this shift structure and pay structure has made it difficult for TCLS to retain paramedics who receive training and then move on to a more attractive shift structure, 24-hour pay for 24-hour shift. We run with very little overhead. That was deleted many years ago to just save dollars for patient care work. We have always operated with a focus on patient care. The last 5 years, we've operated at a deficit, at a financial deficit, to protect patient care staffing, which is 2 24-hour ambulances, 24/7 ambulances, 1 in Hayfork, 1 in Weaverville. They're paramedic level, but we have been struggling to keep paramedics, and so at times our Hayfork ambulance is staffed with 2 EMTs. That affects our Hayfork side, but it also affects things over here, because if that Hayfork call needs advanced life support, our Weaverville ambulance is heading towards them to give that care. We have looked for solutions for years. There are funds out there, IGT, GEMT, there are 2 funding sources that will reimburse a government ambulance for Medi-Cal shortfalls, which is one of our greatest challenges to being whole. Those funds are not available to nonprofits, only to a government service. We explored partnering with existing districts to get at that funding. We talked to PUD and Weaverville Fire District, and we explored what it would take to partner to get at those reimbursements. And what we found was that it exposed any any partnership with us expose those agencies to our financial shortfalls. And we also looked at the hospital briefly, but they are just attaining stability and we really can't expose them to our deficits. We pulled in addition to those districts, we pulled in LAFCO and county representation and we talked about options, and we had a couple of EMS consultants also come in and they volunteered their time to study it with us and try to figure it out. And what we came up with is measures D&E that we'll talk about a little bit. What we're here to say though is we've made it work a long time with not enough staff, and we've gone as far as we can with that make it work attitude. We need some help to protect our staff and to protect patient care for you guys. So I'm going to pass it to Scott, who will talk about our measures.
So just before I start talking about measures, just on a personal note, being a firefighter for so long, it's kind of hard to ask for help. So this hasn't been an easy road for us. A lot of hate it. A lot of hard battles within our own organization, within our board. A lot of differences in opinion, and but at the same time, we all came together to get where we are. So Measure D will form a community service district, similar to the fire district, sewer district in Weaverville, the water district in Weaverville. There's community service districts throughout the county. To be honest, when we started that path, LAFCO was against it. They didn't want us to have another community service district. They were the ones that pushed us away and said, go talk to these other community service districts. And it just, when I was chief at Weaverville, we looked at it, and it opened up the Weaverville Fire District to potentially that liability that I think in 2020, right now we're proposed a $146,000 shortfall in our budget. So, anyway, so that measure is will stand up the community service district. And you can't form a district without collecting a fee. So we've come up with a parcel fee, and again, where we started and where we ended up is a big difference. But we had not only the Medi-Cal shortfalls, which for 70% of our patients, anybody who works in the healthcare will tell you, those are hard to make up for 70% of your call volume. So what we started formulating what we wanted to do as a fee, and lo and behold, the state passed a minimum wage law. And so when we put that up into our, Kathy's an Excel wizard now, when we put that into our Excel spreadsheet and started figuring that in, the numbers were disheartening to say the least. So what we've come up with is an $83 parcel fee, and we went so many numbers, it's 46 for unimproved parcels. So that's, the $83, somebody's figured it out, $7 a month. So we could talk about all the things you could do without, but it's a hard ask, $83, so we understand that. I've been on that, looking at that state ballot sometimes and see all those bond measures that are on there and thinking we're financing our kids' futures through bond measures, and so we get it. We had a lot of struggles, so this is not an easy thing for us, but it's a vital thing. And the thing that we need to remember, this is a local tax. It's going to be controlled by a local board, and none of that money goes out of this county. Okay? So that to me is huge, because we all paid the CAL FIRE fee for a few years. They call it a fee, call it a tax, whatever you want to do, but so that's where we are. Okay, so we've been asked this question a lot: what happens if it doesn't pass? Well, like I said, we're scheduled to have 143,000 shortfall this year. We have about $300,000 in reserve. So by 2021, we're going to have to make some drastic changes. And what that change might be is part-time ambulance in A Fork, maybe no ambulance in A Fork. Who knows? We're just gonna go with what we can, try to do the best we can with what we have. We need the staff for stable response. Kathy talked about, you know, the situation where we don't have a paramedic. So on a good day, we have 2 paramedics in the county. We would like to see that where we have paramedics that are off duty that can respond, so that we can build that depth in the organization. 2 Sundays ago, Kathy and I were supposed to go to High Palm together. She ended up on the ambulance in Weaverville, in Weaverville, and so I went down to High Palm. On my drive down there, Kathy's ambulance went to a major call up Bear Creek, and they had to transport to Mercy. The ambulance, there was a vehicle accident down here in Junction City, so the Hay Fork ambulance responded down here. We know how long that takes. They got there, and then they weren't needed to transport, so they started heading back, and they went to the cardiac arrest in Lewiston. So no ALS support. So those are the kind of things that we see now with this shortfall and all that's going to happen. It's going to be tough. You know, you can't, there's a note here that says healthy services can't rely on 1 or 2 people all the time. So, you know, we see that on the fire departments. I see a lot of volunteers, past and present here in the room, that I've worked with, and we all know, you know, it takes a lot of us to get there. And same with the ambulance service. We need this depth. So, all right, some of the other things that we're going to talk about. I'm just going to kind of go off script on, you know, we've been doing this for, I think Adrian, we came and saw you guys at the Rotary Club in October. So Kathy and I have been doing the song and dance for a while. Let's talk about the rumors that are out there. So how come you're so poor if you have brand new ambulances? That's because this wheeler dealer over here is able to get grant money to do it. How much did it cost us personally out of our funds for the recent ambulance?
$17,000 and
For
$17,600
$135,000.
for $118,000.
Okay, so $118,000 ambulance. Kathy, we paid $17,000 for it. So those things aren't going to be out there forever. The McConnell Foundation, you can only go so many times and ask for the matching funds that USDA wants us to get. So that's why we're there. Why are we buying Mercedes-Benz? Because none of the American-made dealers are making a 4-wheel drive that doesn't have problems. The Ford Transits, the Inlow Hospital is going through the lemon law with theirs. They have one down in Shasta County. So we're getting the best bang we can for our buck there. So let's see some of the other stuff we've heard. Well, if the ambulance goes away, the county will just step in and run it. No offense, Joe. I don't think we'll let the county run the ambulance. Anybody that's been here for a while knows, you know, they got enough to handle. They don't need to have it on. AMR will come in. American Medical Response will come in. It's a private company, and they're there for a profit. They're going to come here and look at our balance sheets and go, yeah, well, anyway. So, and you lose local control when you get a contractor coming in like that. I know I've worked in those types of systems before. So. What we want to do is we want to be able to pay our employees 24 hours a shift, whether they're sleeping or not. They're away from their family. They're, you know, a lot of times they're up at night and running calls, or they just get back in time to go to bed, and then they don't have a call. So it's really tough. By adding, we would like to add another shift with employees, so we have another 2 paramedics to count on, and another 2 EMTs, and then be able to build that depth in. The Hay Fork station right now, we own that. We've been able to pay it off over the last few years. We'd love to put a apparatus bay over there and put a spare ambulance over there, because we have a lot of employees that live in Hay Fork that if they had an ambulance, they could run down to the station, get that ambulance, and get that patient to where they need it to be. there's things like that where we just, you know, we don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, but I can't help but lay in bed thinking how nice it's going to be to have a little bit of funds to be able to do some of these things, to make our service better and reliable. So I think we'll wait for questions, and I'll turn it over to Mr. French.
Thanks. Trinity Alps Unified financially is between a rock and a hard spot. If you've been a tourity of the schools, they're pretty much gutted. You can imagine this building with not anything on the walls, with no flooring, and no tiling, no insulation. All that has been torn out of, probably 80% of the classrooms. I took a tour of Trinity High the other day, and I was amazed at how good it is. The gym is a cement floor, all the plumbing's torn out. So they applied to the state of California, to the Office of Public School Construction, to pay for the work that has been done, and they said no. You have bonding capacity. Trinity Alps Unified has bonding capacity of about $25 million, and they're asking the voters on March 3rd to support Measure F, which is for $16.67 million. Very briefly, I'll read you the measure. Trinity Alps Unified School District and the community require healthy and safe schools for our students and staff. The recent mold crisis highlights the problems with our aging school facilities and infrastructure. Trinity High was built in 1969, and the majority of Weaverville Elementary was built in 1949. So they're old. The passage of Measure F will allow the district to complete the mold remediation and related school reconstruction expeditiously. To date, the mold remediation is done. All the asbestos from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and all of the mold has been eradicated. And I would mention at a cost to date of $11,744,000. Of the $11,744,000, to give them pretty much every last penny they had, they have paid $1,937,855, and that's just to remediate. So now it sits there awaiting new floors, new ceilings, new wall interiors. To date, they owe $9,806,000 to contractors, and I have a list of it, everyone that they owe to, and they have no ability to pay. If you read the article in the Trinity Journal last weekend, it pretty much told it like it is. They're broke, they've expended all their monies. They had to borrow from the county to make payroll in January. They did not have the funding to do that. So they're asking you on March 3rd to vote for the Measure F, and I'll finish reading it. I was digressing. I want to make sure I get everything in. Most importantly, if Measure F will also improve the district's prospects for hardship and modernization applications. When I was superintendent for 20-something years, if you needed something from the state, you went to the state and they approved. But now they look to your bonding capacity, and as I said, Trinity Alps Unified has bonding capacity about $25 million, and they pretty much are saying, get a big piece of that first, and then come see us again. So that's what they're doing. Let's see here. This brings the additional dollars to our community and provides greater impact of the Measure F in Weaverville. Measure F's primary focus is making schools safe for students and staff while allowing necessary modernization. Bond proceeds are for buildings and improvements only. No dollars are available for teachers or administrators, just for the things that need to be fixed. An independent citizens oversight committee with annual audits is required to ensure strict accountability, and this allows efficient and proper use of the bond proceeds. Then also on the measure itself, it says if approved by the voters, Measure F would authorize the district to issue $16,670,000 at legal rates. I called their bond man, and the current rate is 3.45%. I was asked that question at the meeting a couple of weeks ago in Weaverville. And so it's just like when you buy a car and you don't have all the money, there's interest paid, and it's at 3.45%. And certainly it takes a little bit longer I mean, if there was no interest, it'd take 16 years. I suppose they're asking, well, he said it'd take between 26 and 27 years. The measure requires a yes vote from 55% of the electorate of the district to pass. A question I didn't have the answer to the other night, because the district is in dire straits and their budget needs to be approved by the county superintendent of schools, of which I was once, in April. And with the situation they're in now, they will get a negative declaration. When you're under a negative declaration, if for some reason this doesn't pass, please God, please, it increases their interest. Instead of 3.45%, they may be able to sell their bond for 7 or 8%, so that's a concern. But Joanne Harper asked at the last meeting, if the bond passes, can that be counted towards their reserves so they are not in a negative declaration? And the answer is yes. So that's what I know. I was not a crafter of this measure. I had to learn a lot in a short period of time. That's what I know about it. I'm happy to answer any question. One other thing I just found out this morning is that on February 23rd, the Trinity Alps superintendent goes before the Office of Public School Construction and requests funding for the Weaverville portion of this by itself. So we'll know on the 23rd, which is before March 3rd, if they say yes. I don't think it's likely, but it certainly is possible. But I'm here to answer any questions, and any questions I can answer. We didn't do ponds when I was superintendent. We just went and got the money. I'll certainly try to answer for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pound. So let's go ahead and start with Measure A. Again, I sure wish John Fenley was here. He was the author, or is the author of this measure. And so if you have any other questions, then go ahead and make an appointment with the supervisor, John Fenley. So thank you, Adrian, for coming. Question 1. Do you know of any other industry in Trinity County or elsewhere that is taxed like this, i.e. taxed on gross receipts, goods sold?
No, being taxed on money that you haven't made yet, I think is pretty unusual. And very little other taxes are collected in the county. The county's general fund is mainly fulfilled by property taxes. And so, there's the TOT on top of the lodging, and there's, the potential for stump fees. Those are about the only two other business taxes collected by the county anyway, or at all.
Okay. And the follow-up on that is, do you know if the county has provided a viable fee study yet? And if the fees will offset business taxes in any way?
The county has not done a fee study on cannabis licensing at this point. It's been due for quite some time, and we just keep hearing that it's coming, but it has not yet to come. And, I frankly have no idea what it will show. I know as somebody who's been licensed for the entire time through the program, that the startup costs were pretty high. It took a little bit of muscle to get the program off the ground. But as far as the annual services provided by the county for the licensing fees, which for my farm is $5,000 plus another $1,000 that goes directly to the general plan fund. So really we're spending $6,000, $5,000 of it intended to expedite the program, another $1,000 is peeled off and put into a fund to redo the county general plan. And I after being consistently licensed, my project I don't have an environmental review process because the project hasn't changed. I don't have any new land use questions to answer. It seems that there's less work in the renewal process than in the approval process. And so it would be interesting to see the results of a fee study.
Right. Next question is, how can a tax be fair that is not based on production or income?
I don't think it can be. It doesn't feel like a tax particularly. It just feels like a fee.
Yeah.
Because it is up front before having planted. And this will be changing as the state system kind of planes out. But there are people who were in the county process last year and that were county licensed who didn't receive their state licenses. And so if they had been under that tax structure at that point, they would have not been an operational business and still had to pay the county tax.
And a follow-up on that is there a provision for crop failure or product price dropping?
No, there isn't. And there are probably several others. Humboldt County, who has a similar tax structure, changed theirs to reflect the actual square footage that got planted versus what your license says you could plant. Not every single individual achieves the full square footage under their license.
Yeah.
On the state level, they're reviewing the entire tax structures. They're seeing the taxes paid by cultivators and the rest of the supply chain, keeping the prices so high in retail outlets that it's perpetuating the black market. It is not allowing the licensed retailers to thrive.
Yeah. How can the same piece of land be taxed 3 times? Property tax, license fees, and proposed Measure A tax. Again, I wish John Finley was here to answer that question.
I don't see how it can realistically. And again, it just doesn't really feel like a tax. It's not. I don't know. I don't think it can. I don't think it should be. That's for certain.
Yeah, I think this one's more of a statement. It says, how can this be justified, tax after tax, no new taxes?
It's hard not to agree with that. I'm too aware, as I sit here next to these other folks here, that our county needs revenue. And based on the property values, we're pretty much hamstrung by the public land. I mean, I'm not one to go into politics around public land, but the fact is our property taxes have a ceiling, and that's what we have that we can deal with. And so maybe we need to find other creative mechanisms to increase revenue for the county, and that could include a cannabis tax on cultivation, retail, and whatnot. That was reasonable. I would not oppose that at all.
Yeah. The last question was, how is the lawsuit against Measure A proceed? And also, how can folks help?
Well, take a vote on Measure A button for sure and wear it around and take some of the work we put together and try and just keep people informed about the reality of this tax. And there are a lot of missing components, in my opinion, in this tax being functional.
The website.
Pardon?
And the website.
Oh yeah, and the website, that's right, thank you, Julia. TrinityCountyDeservesBetter.com has a lot of the information on it that is necessary, I think, to see where we're going with this. And I really do hope that we can have an open conversation and develop this. This was put together with no input from the cultivator at all, which I think could be considered a stakeholder. It could be.
And is there a contact to get a hold of you or other opponents or proponents to ask questions?
Let's see, we could do that through the Trinity County.
TrinityDeservesBetter@gmail.
TrinityDeservesBetter@gmail. Thank you. Technical assistance.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah.
Adrian, there's one more development that there's a pre-trial hearing for the challenge to Measure A on the 11th, I think it's 10 a.m. at the courthouse. There's a hearing. That'd be another way to show your support or not support.
Thank you, John. I have not heard of that. That's January 11th?
February.
Great.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Hey, on a side note, our Grange sister Pamela Dishman provided some downriver hospitality with a bunch of homemade cookies over there, so please make sure there's no cookies left when All right, so let's move on to Measure D and E. So the first question would be, what's the calculation and how this tax works?
How did we calculate the tax?
Yes.
We fixed what was wrong with life support, basically, with adding, we paid 24-hour shifts for our crew, add 4 full-time ambulance personnel, and projected out that for 5 years and look to operate with budget deficit. It was calculated to be conservative. We still will have to write grants for equipment. The pay for our crews, we've always had to compete with renting services for ambulance personnel, and with this proposal, we didn't make the pay compete with them really, because renting Shasta County is off the chart as far as national pay for ambulance people. They have, both of the services have a big union, and so, but we've arrived at fair pay and 24-hour pay for the crews. So we calculated what was needed based on staffing.
Thank you. How long will this tax last?
There's no sunset on it, but the funding, the two funding sources that I talked about for Medi-Cal shortfalls, one of them is secure forever, one of them is threatened to go away, and we haven't budgeted that one. If it comes through and if it stays, we may be able to reduce the amount, but we've had to go ahead and build the budget projections without it while it's unstable.
Okay, thank you. And then, what is the geographic area served by 2 TCLS ambulances?
Sure, I'll answer. Well, let's see, we go downriver to, just past Denver. Yeah, just, so Hawkins Bar and Southern are serviced by Buba. Okay, so that's where we go there. We go to Coffee Creek, all the way up to the county line, top of Buckhorn, go around Hayfork, down through Hind Palm, down in the valley there, and that's basically about it. We go out to Wildwood, 36, that was over there.
Wow, that's a big area.
Yeah.
How many calls on average do you run per year?
It's about 1,500. It's kind of a flat number, so you can only raise the price so much, unless 70% of the calls not paying the full cost of the service. We're stuck as far as it's not like the service down in Reading can put a 12-hour car, which is they'll work a 12-hour shift during the busy part, so they don't miss any transports. So we don't have that ability.
Right. And then the last question is, was there any alternative looked at that could have spread the cost of supporting TCLS to all taxpayers in Trinity County?
Yeah, we talked about a sales tax. As a longtime city employee, the sales tax is very, very up and down. We have a washout on Highway 299, and we see business slow down. We have the fires, nobody comes up to the lake. So that we needed a stable source. And, as a property owner ourselves, I think everybody on the board owns a piece of property or two. It seems like it always falls on the back of the property owners. And I think one of the things, to answer an earlier question, if we get to a point where we have Medicare or Medi-Cal reforms, or these funding sources give us a better foothold in making our services equal, and the budget at the end, not in the red all the time. We're definitely as a board, we're going to be looking at, do we not collect the tax? We're not making any promises, but it's gonna take a while. We got to see where the minimum wage puts us. We have some projections, and we'll see how that goes. But I think we're not here to have $5 million in the bank. We want to have some operating capital. The other thing that we're looking at is, quite frankly, one of the things that's kind of helped us out, and we've used a lot of part-time employees to make it happen. But for example, the fire camp at Helena brought us $80,000, and that's clear money after we pay the employees. So if we have this increase in staffing, we're hoping to be able to support that fire camp type situation. Again, that's another source of revenue. But when you're making a budget, yeah, we put zero there every year. We can't count on it. So, you know, I think from my standpoint as one board member, you know, if we get to that point where we don't need a tax, we'll definitely be looking at backing away from or lessening it.
All right, that was the last question. Thank you very much.
May I say, another reason the sales tax we looked at, it, without forming a district, we cannot take advantage of government reimbursement for medical shortfalls, and they're most of the reason that we're here, and we don't want to leave that on the table. Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right, so moving on to measure F. Will the project be funded by the state if the bond fails? What if it fails twice?
Give me that crystal ball. The state has said, don't think you can just do a half-hearted approach here and we'll just go ahead and pay for it. So at the least, I know that they will have to float it again. The challenge they have is with their financial situation. Time is of the essence, but they will at least have to do it twice. In that period of time, if it doesn't pass, the potential, and it never happened while I was superintendent, the district would go into state receivership, where they essentially send up an administrator to run the school and a board to tell you what you're going to do and what you can't do. So we're certainly hoping to avoid that.
Right. How much of the requested bond goes towards being ADA compliant versus mold abatement?
When I toured the other day, we talked about that, and he pointed out some deficiencies with ADA, which is the Americans with the Disabilities Act, and there were some issues that they would address. But if I was going to speculate, 90% of the funding will address the mold and the asbestos. The total bill on the whole project is over $30 million. So the request is about 60%, and the state will pick up the other 40%. Yeah. But there are some issues, some ADA issues at the high school. I certainly dealt with those when I was superintendent in the buildings that TCOE owned, but the lion's share is the mold and asbestos.
Yeah. What funds have been available in the past for similar school building situations, and why are they not available now?
Well, things have changed. All the other districts, Burr Ranch is a good example. They had a big issue down there with the mold, but there's no bonding capacity there, so they were able to go directly to the state. I never, and the funds that were available and are still in theory available, there are two modernization funds, of which those schools built in 49 and 69 are both direly in need of, and then critical hardship dollars. When I was superintendent, you always applied for critical hardship. I think the problem the state really has, because I'm a proponent of, if you want to check all the schools in Humboldt, Mendocino, and Trinity County that are over 40 years old, you've got a $1, $2, $3 trillion problem here. So they're going back to the locals now. They've changed, saying, we're not going to fund it, you're going to have to fund a part of it. I think it's prevalent in Mendocino. I think it's prevalent everywhere, and our schools were a good place to go. The smaller schools are saved by the fact that they don't have bonding capacity, but critical hardship dollars, when I was superintendent, I've been retired 7 years, were what you always went for to deal with these issues. But the problem got so huge, these inspectors came out in the schools, and who knows if there won't be more.
Yeah.
Did I answer that question?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, living in Humboldt County for a number of years, it seemed like every house had mold in it. There was mold everywhere in the forest. Where they're gonna go and look and scratch the surface.
Yeah. Well, I know in Arcata that was a problem. The other thing I always scratched my head, I started out as a schools teacher here, is because it used to really snow in this country. why would you build a flat roof? It helps create the moisture. If you look at Junction City School, it's beautiful. They don't have the flat roofs. They're not going to have the problem. Burnt Ranch, they've corrected those problems. So they're dealing with past sins of construction, in my opinion.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
Okay?
So I guess what we could do is just last follow-up questions from the audience. If there are a few questions that would like to be asked, we could just ask it to individuals within the board. Yes, Joe?
Yeah, my name's Joe. When you say that state would bring in receivership, their own manager, their own board, of course they're gonna look at cost. Would that mean something like, this year there's no sports activities because we don't have the money for it? Is that the potential?
They certainly would have that opportunity. I happen to know at Trinity High School, football is a religion. You're never going to get the board say, well, we're not going to have football or baseball. But the state certainly has, the ability to do that if they chose to do that. I'm certainly hoping we never have to move to the receivership. I just hope we get the darn schools fixed and we can go on. But they can look at all those non-required classes. I mean, they can skin it down to skin and bones that the locals in any of the school districts probably wouldn't be willing to do.
I'm glad you brought up football because I coached football at Modoc, one of your rivals. And
Oh, they were tough.
we don't want to forfeit win. We want to keep the rivalry. We don't want to lose your team.
Well, hey, it seems like Junction City got a new facility 20 years ago.
Yes.
Burt Ranch, well, maybe they didn't update their facility, but if the facilities are from the 1940s, is there any protocol for upgrading, any grants for just upgrading the infrastructure, or?
Yes, go to the locals, get some money, and we'll fund the rest. That's the protocol.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the protocol 10 years ago, but it definitely is the protocol.
Okay.
And they're going back on the 23rd, and it requested the dollars for West, which is about $7 million. So the lion's share of the cost for a $30 million project are at the high school.
Yes.
I have a question for Adrian. So you mentioned, and I've heard a few times about if this tax passes, then we should be concerned about the how this would support the black market, which I think none of us want to be supported. Could you unpack that a little bit more?
Well, I would say that it's more taxes in general. This one would just simply add to the cost of production and probably trickle down the supply chain and continue to support the less than affordable prices in the retail market, which is that and the prohibitive regulation of retail throughout so many parts of the state are the two main things that are causing the black market to thrive and the regulated market to really suffer.
Yes, Ginger?
On the bond, now, how much would they'd have to be paid on property tax, right? How much would it cost us on our property tax?
Thank you. It's $60 per 100,000 of assessed valuation. When I look at my taxes, I would say my assessed valuation, I built my home in 1990, is probably about half of what I could sell it for. So unless you bought a house in the last 6 months where there isn't so much of a difference between assessed and appraised, but it's, so I figure, well, my house, I looked at the tax bill the other day because I'm starting to do taxes, and $192,000. So it's going to cost me about $9 a month on my taxes because I'm just under $200,000. If it was $200,000 of assessed evaluation, it'd be $120 a year, or what, $10 a month? Yeah. And I realize, everyone's asking for money, but healthy schools for our kids.
Okay.
I got a question for the group.
Sure.
So what are the things you guys are hearing out there about, our measure or these other measures? I know you had a chance to write questions down and the social media being what it is, and a lot of times we don't have a way to deal with that effectively. What are you hearing out there? Yes, sir.
We've been discussing the the Measure A cannabis tax extensively through the whole community, and as that conversation's been happening, there's been a lot of it touching on D&E, and I haven't run across anybody that has anything bad to say about D&E. I think everybody that I've been talking to is very supportive of it. It seems like a really cheap, easy, no-brainer. And I know the cannabis community is very supportive of both that and the school bond measure. It seems obvious.
Yeah, Naomi?
I was just gonna say, some of the feedback I've heard is from seniors on fixed incomes worrying about, how this will affect them since they're not billed for their property taxes monthly, they're billed on a yearly basis, and it's a huge lump sum for them. You know, when they're living on sometimes less than $1,200 a month, some of them, you know, it's a hit. So that is something I've heard, and I don't know that we have an answer for it. And you already addressed whether we could have spread it across everyone. You know, property owners who rent their homes can pass that on to the renters, but unfortunately, seniors with fixed income
Yeah.
have some low choices.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue, you know, and like I said, in our discussions, you know, those are the people we're talking about is, you know, those are the people that use the service. You know, we were talking earlier, you know, us young folks weren't gonna use the service hopefully, but when we do need it, we need it there, so. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the only feedback that I've heard, other than at the Weaverville event where everyone heard the feedback, is that seniors on a fixed income that own multiple properties and parcels, then having to, the burden of the fee multiplied, but I don't
Yeah.
that wasn't my personal gripe, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
just.
no, we get that, you know, and again, it was, I mean, we went to, the original document went to LAFCO with a certain number. And, we got those comments and
Right.
we reduced, you know, that
Unimproved.
side and increased the improved parcel side. So,
Right.
yes, ma'am.
I would like you to fix the sign outside of the Hayfork office because it's folded over and you can't read it.
Okay.
That's the only feedback I have.
Speaking of signs,
You gotta stretch it a little bit, just,
Okay, we
Can't
have
see.
some, we'll do that.
Okay.
We have some signs over here. if you-
because I support it, so I think you should see the sign.
Yes. If you have a leak in the roof or something, good for that. After the election, of course. Joe?
Yeah, I was just wondering, does the passing of D&E change at all how we buy into TCLS every year for just that coverage?
Membership,
Yeah, the membership.
the membership is separate, and they're two separate things. The membership provides protection from balance billing, and what we tell people when they sign up, if you have Medicare and you have a really good supplement, you may not need a membership, and you can contact your supplement and find out. Medicare patients are subject to deductibles and co-pays sometimes. Medicare will pay 80% of what they allow, which is currently $492, and the patient would receive a balance bill for the 20% of that. So membership, and if your insurance pays your ambulance bill, you would be left with a balance bill perhaps, that the membership would it just means we write off any balance.
So that membership can go forward, it will go forward.
It will go forward. We don't have any plans to stop the membership because it is a community service. In December, I was just looking at the numbers, and they're gonna be up on the website any minute now, any day now, but in December, we wrote off $4,700 in membership write-offs, and we served 17 patients, which was a large amount, an unusual amount. The smallest write-off was $150, the largest was $460. And so you pay $50, if you buy the $150 membership, that is $60 for Trinity County Life Support, and then the other dollars go off to the two air ambulances, REACH and PHI. So, but it is providing protection if you need a 911 transport.
For some perspective, after the Helena fire, I joined the volunteer fire department to learn how to protect my home and fight fires and just living up in these mountains. And I learned real fast that I would say 90% of the work that the volunteer fire department does is working with the ambulance on medical calls. And being that I'm in my 30s and I'm pretty healthy, knock on wood, I have never had the ambulance come to my house, but right away I saw that our community is full of elderly people and children, and you don't need it until you need it. It's like insurance, and we can't not have an ambulance here. So that's my little plug.
One other question that I keep coming across is, if you guys were to go away, would a for-profit ambulance company be willing to serve Trinity County even? And why not, if not?
Well, you just said it's for profit.
Right.
And so any corporation that's gonna look at that, they're gonna look at our balance sheet, and go, yeah, well, anyways, it's not gonna work, They may come in and do it. I know a lot of places, the county, through the state, regulations, the county is responsible for providing that service. So if we would have to close the doors, the county would have to come in and they'd put it out to contract. And, if somebody bid on it, maybe they would come up here. I would see it as a place where they would put a reserve ambulance, so that if they got busy down the valley, they'd bring an ambulance down. I don't know. So.
I feel like the quality would decrease, and we would not have two 24/7 ALS ambulances, because it can't be supported with what we can bring in with patient billing. Our billing is effectively done by a billing company, and it's maximized. We've done everything that we can with diligence to make it work, and they will have to treat it, a for-profit would have to treat it as a business and not an essential health care. And that's what would be lost.
I just wanted to point out too, can you speak to this group, because it's something that I found really neat and wonderful about TCLS. Can you tell us how many of the people who work on the ambulances currently as EMTs or paramedics also double as firefighters?
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's a board member of firefighters. I have 11 years with Coffee Creek Fire back in the day. We have two in Hayfork, Lisa and Ryan Hamill, who are Hayfork Fire Department members. Flavia is an old timer with us that we'd like to have back when she gets rid of the Forest Service. And, who else? We have Landon Cox with Weaverville Fire and Jordan Hamilton with Weaverville Fire. We are trying to recruit Duncan and you. So a lot of them are. And the reason that they are our employees is because they have a real passion to take care of people, and we try to never hire ambulance drivers. We try to hire people who want to care for people and who want to learn and grow. And so that's what would get lost.
I think one of the things that I would like to see too is we hear a lot of there's nothing for the kids to do when they get out of high school. They all there's not jobs here, blah blah blah. You know what? We have a lot of kids coming out of high school that have gone through the fire department, come into the ambulance service. I know Kane Edwards started on the volunteer fire department back when I first started. He went to EMT, he worked as an EMT, then he went to medic school. And right now he's going through the Cal Fire Engineer Academy down there in Riverside. So, you see kids like that have come through the high school, and there's a whole, I think the Cox family has 3 of them. And so, you just see these kids, and I would like to see TCLS be that place where these kids in high school could go out and get their EMT, and when they got out of high school, they could come work at the ambulance and have go to medic school and get that trade. So, Rob?
Naomi had brought up when I was thinking about the firefighters and working there, but could you also speak as to the training that the firefighters get, as he alluded to the medicals they go on, where they get their training to do that?
Yeah, you know, ever since the beginning, I've called Kathy and I said, okay, I'm putting my training calendar together for the next 3 months. What day works for you? And she'd bend over backwards to get an ambulance there, and we'd have the ambulance out, and she'd bring the, even if the crew was gone, she'd come in on her own time and bring the backup ambulance, and we, you know, once every 3 months, and that's just one department of 13. So there, you know, and again, that's something that's really dear to all of us, because all the board members have time on the fire department, on the volunteer fire departments. And so, you know, that's one of the things that we could do better, I think, is support those volunteer fire departments in the training. They've been doing it for a lot of years, and right now, to make ends meet, we're actually having to charge what it costs us to get cards for TCLS. So
We train between 200 and 300 per year in the county. Whether it's EMT, all combined, CPR, EMT, first responder, Title 22, first aid, public safety first aid.
Is that just the firefighters, or is that
That's
teachers?
That's everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
and the other part of that, Rob, is the standby time on fire incidents. You know, I know you've been out on a couple of fires that we've had with the ambulance standing by in case we have a victim and or one of the firefighters needs it. So that's another service that's provided. And if they don't transport anybody, they're out there, you know, as that insurance policy. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to verify on the sales tax, that means if we did a sales tax increase, that would mean you couldn't get reimbursed for the Medicare?
Correct, the Medi-Cal. We have to be a district, we have to be a government ambulance to qualify for the government reimbursement.
Well, could you be a government under the district and still get the sales tax? That way, everybody that went through Trinity County would be paying a portion.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. If you create a district, you have to charge a parcel fee. So, but we did look at that, and the sales tax is one thing, but like Kathy's alluding to, the GMET specifically says it's for city or county governments or special districts like us, not for profit. And Kathy she actually went to Sacramento to several of their meetings, trying to worm her way into it. And you know, the guys were very nice, and they helped us along the way, and they gave us other contacts to kind of talk to. But there's no way to do it that way.
The LAFCO process, Local Area Formation Commission, we had to write a proposal. We had to write a proposal, and what you really have to do is justify the need and then say how you're gonna fund it. They will not form a district if there's not adequate funding to run the district.
Drew?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, more of an, Andrew Franklin, more of an observation than a question. You know, I served on the JC Volunteer Fire Department Board for a couple of years, and the one issue I see in this county that bothers me is that when we have catastrophic fires, you know, our essential services, our fire departments, and Scott, you mentioned about you guys getting some money out of the Helena fires and whatnot, and it seems like these catastrophic events that are disasters here help fund our emergency services, and so many of them, you know, get a little fat, and then the lean years come when we're not in a disaster, and maybe we can work with our elected officials and our state and county to smooth this out so we have a smooth stream of funding. I'm sure you've experienced this, Scott, with Weaverville Fire Department, where you guys help the Forest Service and CDF out, and you get paid well to do it, but so much of our essential services budget seem to be depending on disasters happening in Trinity County, or you know, that's just my observation.
Yeah.
And you guys are in the thing there, and somehow we need to work this out, because we need these services, and we need them, you know, daily.
You're right, and those disasters, those fire camps and fire contracts are the only way that any of our agencies have been able to put away any reserve or to purchase equipment.
Yeah, that's just not the way it should be. As I said, just an observation. Seems like we should have a steady stream of funding, not depending on us suffering.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming out. Thank you for coming up and representing these bond measures for making our community a better place. And yeah, thank you very much.